200 billion euros. Just look at that number, all those zeros. It's a figure so huge, it almost feels fake, right? Like it's not even real money. But it is, and it's at the center of one of the biggest, most mind-boggling financial scandals of our lifetime. To try and wrap our heads around that, 200 billion euros is more than the entire yearly economic output of the country of Estonia. Think about that. Everything made, every service provided, every single person's work for an entire year is less than this one pile of cash. And the craziest part? Estonia is exactly where this all went down. Because that 200 billion euros, this absolute flood of questionable money from Russia and other former Soviet states, it wasn't spread out across the globe. No. For 8 years, it was funneled through one single, unassuming bank branch in the little capital city of Tallinn. So the real question is, how on earth does that happen? How does a tidal wave of money like that wash through one tiny office without anyone, anywhere, pulling the alarm?
Well, to get to the bottom of that, we can't just look at one shady bank. We have to pull back the curtain on a secret financial world that exists in parallel to our own. It's a world built by geniuses to make the rich and powerful completely invisible, and to make their fortunes untouchable. This is the story of the shadow economy, and how trillions of dollars are being hidden in plain sight.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start by picking apart that $200 billion bank scandals to see how this all works in the ground. Then we're going to zoom out and explore this borderless shadow economy. We'll look at the actual tools they use to make money disappear, the shell companies and trusts. We'll take a tour of the secret vaults where billionaires store their stuff, from luxury penthouses to tax-free fortresses. Then we'll meet the architects who build this whole system and the whistleblowers who risk it all to tear it down. And finally, we'll look at the big ideas on the table to try and get those trillions back. So let's kick things off with Danske Bank. Because as shocking as this one case is, you have to understand it's not some one-offs thing. It's just the part of the iceberg that happened to break the surface and become visible. It's our way into a much, much bigger story. Okay, this timeline right here, it tells you everything. This wasn't a mistake. This was years of looking the other way. As early as 2007, the Central Bank of Russia, of all places, sends a letter to Danske's head office in Denmark. They literally warned them that their little Estonian branch was being used for, quote, criminal activity in its purest form, involving billions of rubles monthly. I mean, the alarm bell wasn't just wrong, it was smashed with a sledgehammer. And what did they do? Absolutely nothing. For the next 8 years, that branch became a fire hose for money from sketchy sources in Russia, Latvia, and Cyprus. The only reason it stopped is because a whistleblower, a guy named Howard Wilkinson, started making noise. The bank was finally forced to admit the truth in 2018, $200 billion. But here's the part that should really get you. After all that, the top executives in Denmark who ignored the warnings, all charges dropped. The bank itself, yeah, they paid a $2 billion fine in the US. Sounds big, but when you've helped move 100 times that amount in dirty money, it's just the cost of doing business. Nobody at the top went to jail, and that right there is a core rule of the shadow economy. The company might pay a fine, but the people in charge almost always walk away. You see, the Danske Bank scandal wasn't really a failure of the system. It was a massive success for a hidden global system that's designed to do exactly this. And to understand it, we need a name for this place where all the world's hidden money lives. The journalist Oliver Bullock calls it Moneyland. This quote just nails it. Moneyland isn't a country you can point to on a map. It's not just the Cayman Islands anymore. It's a borderless, virtual nation-state for the super rich. It's a sinkhole that sucks money out of countries and hides it in assets in places like London and New York. It's an Aladdin's cave full of treasure, protected from what its citizens fear the most, the mice. So who are the mice? Well, that's us. It's tax collectors, cops, courts, journalists, anyone who thinks that even the richest people should have to follow the same rules as everybody else. So this is the key thing to get. Moneyland is a system. It's a web of legal loopholes and professional enablers that create a separate reality, a reality where a Russian oligarch or a corrupt politician can just slip off their nationality and all their legal duties like an old coat. They become citizens of Moneyland. And in Moneyland, there's only one law: protect the assets. The economist Gabriel Zuckman estimates that something like 10% of the world's entire GDP, we're talking over $8 trillion, is hidden here. Trillions that aren't being taxed, aren't being invested in the real economy, and aren't building schools or hospitals. So how do you actually move trillions of dollars into the shadow world? I mean, you can't just wire it from your checking account. It takes a whole toolkit of sophisticated financial instruments designed for one thing and one thing only, creating so many layers of anonymity that the money becomes completely untraceable. It's the ultimate shell game.
Okay, let's walk through this, because this is the basic blueprint for hiding wealth. Let's say you're a corrupt official and you've skimmed $100 million bucks. You want to buy a sick penthouse in London. You don't buy it in your own name, that's for sure. That leaves a paper trail. So, step one, you hire a law firm to set up a shell company for you in, say, the British Virgin Islands. This company has no office, no staff, it's just a name in a filing cabinet. This is the wrapper. The BVI company is now the legal owner of your penthouse, but who owns the BVI company? Not you. Step two, you create another layer. You set up a trust. The trust now legally owns the shell company. And who's the final beneficiary of the trust? The person who gets all the benefits? That's you. But your name is now buried under so many layers of legal fiction across multiple countries that it's nearly impossible for anyone to connect you, the human being, to that London penthouse. You control it, you live in it, you can sell it, but on paper, you own nothing.
So when you think about these secret offshore havens, what comes to mind? Probably some Caribbean island with palm trees, right? Or maybe a quiet private bank in Switzerland. That's the cliché, but it's also totally out of date. The real answer, the place that's become one of the hottest, most secretive financial havens on the planet, is South Dakota. No, I'm not kidding. The Pandora Papers leak showed that billionaires and corrupt officials from all over the world were setting up trusts not in Panama, but in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, to hide their money. And here's why. This chart lays it all out. Just look at court records. In Switzerland, they can be made public. In Nevada, a judge might seal them. But in South Dakota, they are automatically and permanently sealed. It's secrecy by default. A trust there can last forever, shielding wealth from taxes for generations. It offers insane protection from creditors or angry ex-spouses. And, get this, they even allow for quiet trusts, which is a legal tool that lets you hide the trust's existence from its own beneficiaries. You could set one up for your kids, and they might never even know it's there. So for years, the U.S. has been pointing fingers at other countries, demanding transparency, all while some of its own states have been quietly turning in to the new Switzerland. Okay, so you have the legal tools to make your ownership totally invisible. But where do you actually put the value? Hiding trillions of dollars takes more than just a bank account. You need to turn that money into physical things, into vaults that can soak up enormous amounts of cash while staying completely under the radar. One of the most popular vaults, hands down, is high-end real estate. It's the new Swiss bank account. Just look at New York City. Almost half of all property value is held by anonymous corporations, not people. And if you zero in on the super expensive stuff, the places on Billionaires Row worth over $100 million bucks, that number jumps to a crazy 80%. These are just safety deposit boxes in the sky, owned by the same shell companies we talked about, often sitting dark and empty for years. A great example from the Pandora Papers was the King of Jordan. Turns out he'd secretly bought over $100 million worth of property in the US and the UK, including a massive Malibu estate, all through a web of offshore companies. And then you have a place like Dubai, which has become a global magnet for parking cash, no questions asked. About a third of its residential property is foreign-owned, a lot of it by people from conflict zones or dictatorships. This is just capital flight, plain and simple. Money being sucked out of unstable countries and laundered into a luxury apartment that nobody ever lives in. But what if you're not buying a building? What if you're into something smaller, more portable, but just as valuable? A Picasso, a rare diamond, a case of priceless wine. Well, for stuff like that, the shadow economy has created the perfect vault. A place that lets you buy and sell incredible wealth, completely tax-free, without the asset ever seeing the light of day. Welcome to the world of the free port. Think of them as super secure, climate-controlled fortresses, usually built right next to an airport in places like Geneva or Singapore. Here's the legal magic trick. Because they're in a customs-free zone, anything you store inside is legally considered to be in transit, like it's just passing through on its way to another country. So a collector can buy a $100 million painting, ship it straight to a free port, and never pay a penny in sales tax or import fees. But here's the genius part. They can then sell that painting to another collector inside the free port. The ownership changes, but the art never moves. And because the sale happens in transit, there are no capital gains taxes either. It is a perfect, tax-free marketplace for the ultra-rich, all happening in a legal twilight zone, miles away from any prying eyes. A system this complex, this slick, it doesn't just build itself. Hiding trillions of dollars is not a DIY job. It takes an entire industry of very smart, very well-paid professionals. These are the architects of Moneyland. And on the other side, you have the handful of people who see the damage this system causes and decide to risk everything to expose it. And they have a name, the wealth defense industry. This is a global army of elite lawyers, accountants from the big firms, wealth managers. They are basically the getaway drivers for the world's hidden money. They're the ones setting up the shell companies, drafting the trusts, and telling their clients which tiny island has the best new secrecy laws. And these aren't shady characters in some back alley. They work in the glass towers of London and New York. They are the essential enablers who make this whole shadow economy possible, and they get paid millions to do it. And this right here, this shows you the completely upside-down morality of Moneyland. On one side, you have Hervé Falciani. He was an IT guy at HSBC's private bank in Switzerland. He saw that the bank was actively helping thousands of clients, including arms dealers, hide their money and dodge taxes. So he leaked the data. His leak helped governments all over the world get back over $1 billion in taxes. So what was his reward? A Swiss court branded him a thief and sentenced him to 5 years in prison. Now look at the other side. HSBC, the bank that knowingly broke the law and profited from it. What happened to them? They paid a fine. No executives went to prison. The whistleblower gets jail time. The bank writes a check. That's justice in Moneyland. For decades, this system has been running pretty much unchecked. But the sheer scale of it all and the damage it's doing is starting to cause a real fight back. So this last part is about that battle, the fight to close the floodgates and bring all those trillions back into the real world. And this chart, this pretty much explains why people are so furious. The economist Gabriel Zucman figured out the true tax rate people actually pay. For a normal person with a regular job, your taxes come right out of your paycheck. Your effective tax rate is somewhere around 25%. But for the world's billionaires, their effective personal tax rate is often less than half of 1%. How is that even possible? Well, their money doesn't come from a salary. It comes from the value of their assets going up. They can live like kings by just borrowing against their stocks and real estate. And as long as they don't sell anything, there's no capital gain, so there's no income tax to pay. It's all perfectly legal, and it's a system designed to let the people with the most contribute the least. This massive gap has led Zucman and a lot of others to push for a pretty radical solution. And countries like Brazil and France are now bringing it up at the G20. The idea is, if billionaires can legally avoid income taxes, then stop trying to tax their income. Tax their wealth instead. The proposal is a global minimum tax of just 2% on the wealth of the world's 3,000 or so billionaires. That alone would raise about $250 billion a year, money that could be used to fight climate change or improve healthcare around the world. Now, the challenges are huge. It would take incredible global cooperation to make it work, but it leaves us with a huge question. With trillions hidden offshore and a system that allows the wealthiest to pay almost nothing, is a global wealth tax no longer a radical idea, but maybe the only way to make the system fair again?